Yes, let's do it.
All right. So, welcome everyone who is getting on this call tonight. This is a very special collaboration, Healing Your Money Story to be financially resilient. And Adalina and I are going to tell you about our long-term story. And I will pause my screen, stop screen sharing, just so that we could do a little like big face hello. Hello. My name's Hadassah Damien, and I have a project called Ride Free Fearless Money, and I have been teaching creatives, activists, progressive people, folks who are suspicious of capitalism, and kind of like everyone else in the middle about how to practically work with money and finances. I've been a longtime artist and activist, and for me, coming to figuring out how to work with money was a way to figure out how to fund art and fund social change in the LGBTQ communities that I'm part of, and figuring out how to lift up change and be able to like give back to things that matter to me, like racial justice, social justice, and helping in this process, you know, people unfurl from a connection to pain and money, which I've seen both in myself and in my friends and in the many people that I've worked with. So to me, being able to think about money in more neutral ways is actually a way to like return energy to ourselves, for our own ability to self-care and heal, but also to be able to contribute back to the communities and other things that matter to us. So with that, I'm going to hand it to Adalina to say hello.
Hi, everybody. It's wonderful to see you here. In neuroscience that I use quite regularly. And my background was in first dealing with money, you know, as a human being, and working with people who were experiencing incredible trauma. And that was an amazing training ground for me to be able to understand money on a deeper level and to understand the different things that go into our beliefs and our thoughts and our actions around money. After I worked for the UN for about a decade, I worked in lots of different countries, and I saw the way that our cultures and the people that we grow up around affect our beliefs about money. I decided to start doing some more neuroscience research on the topic about our beliefs and how our brains can actually circuit to hold certain beliefs more tightly than others, and the ways that we can release those neuronal connections and those pathways in the brain to open them up for new beliefs and new memories and new things to allow us to rewrite our financial stories. I have been blessed to be friends with Hadassah for about 32 years, and we have had a lot of talks about money as well. And in the midst of one of our talks about money, she was sharing more about her project, Ride Free Fearless Money. And it was kind of the first time that I had the inkling that I wanted to work for myself, and that I was very sick of working for other people. I'd been working for other people already for, you know, I guess 20 years almost at that point. No, 15 years. And I was ready to go out on my own and to start my own organization. And so in addition to the two NGOs that I run, I also have my own healing practice now, and I practice something called Transformational Healing. And this form of healing is a combination of my neuroscience background and my counseling background. And I also work with spirit guides, just bringing a little woo into the conversation. And my spirit guides channel through certain healing for people, depending on what it is that they need. And we work with recircuiting the brain and retraining the brain so that you can begin to feel not only worthy of having financial abundance, but also retrain your brain so that all of your actions line up with that belief system. And so we're going to start working on that tonight. Thanks so much for being here, everybody.
Totally. So what we are going to do is we're just going to start with like a little storytelling between Adalina and myself, because what you have on deck tonight is you have a trained counselor, Adalina, and neurolinguistic scientist. And then you have in me a sociologist, political scientist, activist, artist. And we come at things very differently, but in the conversations Adalina and I have had, what we loved finding out is that we are moving towards the same goals of like people being able to really move themselves in order to move the world around us. And to me, I'm a systems thinker. I'm always wondering, well, how can I do my work so that it can ripple out? But let's get untheoretical for a second. I want to go back to like Adalina and I met when we were 8 years old in church. We both have single moms and you know, we met because it's like our moms would come to church early. Your mom was up in the orchestra, my mom was up in the choir, and they would just like go do their rehearsals and dump us together to go be wild little beasts running around. And I mean, I feel, number one, lucky to have had a friend for over 30 years, just period, right, in this world. But I feel like because of how long we've known each other, we've been able to go through and see so many highs and so many lows of each other's lives, right? And so one way we wanted to like start this conversation was with some storytelling of our own, right? To do a little like reflecting on our own like experiences and observations around money. So I'm gonna pop the first question to Adalina as like, you know, what was a real high that you've had about money, like a high point, and what was a low point that you've had?
So my high point is right now, actually. My business has been growing really steadily for 3 years. And finally, I'm at the point where I get to be bicoastal, which has been a dream of mine. I've lived all over the world and I've lived in lots of different countries and experienced lots of different things through the privilege that I had of working for the UN. But as I age, I want to travel differently and I want to live very differently. And I want to be able to wander as much as I want to wander. And so my healing practice has gotten to the point where I can actually be bicoastal and I can have a place here in New York. I also have a place on the West Coast. And so I'm traveling out there later this month to go find my next place. So that's been my high.
And so, Adalina, it sounds like your high.
Oh, good.
Oh,
I hear you.
hey, yeah. Well, it sounds, Adalina, like your high is about you being able to like be free, right? Or like that, like your job has set you up in a way that you can like achieve something that's important to you. And it sounds like traveling or freedom or moving around. Is that quite right?
Absolutely. Freedom is everything. And so for me, when I think about money, the first thing that comes to mind now, of course, after doing lots of healing work, the first thing that comes to mind now is the word freedom. Yeah.
Totally. And what about, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because like when I think about freedom, I think about it's an abstracted concept, right? And often like freedom is the ability to do something or the ability to choose something, right? And it's, you know, super mythological in America, but it's also this idea of like being able to choose, right? And not be stuck, right? Freedom in some ways is like the opposite of non-choice or stuckness.
Exactly.
Talk to me about
and that's why we're here.
That's
talk about all that.
Really why we're here. But what's a low point?
You know, Hadassah and I talked about these questions a little bit beforehand, and I was trying to come up with something specific, but I think my honest answer is the best answer, which is that there have been so many low points. Like it would be hard for me to choose which was the lowest. There were lots of low points in childhood when we didn't have enough money for food or, you know, classes that we wanted to take, education, that kind of thing. And there were also low points as an adult working in the film industry in New York. in my 20s. I didn't really know what was what, and I hadn't done any healing work on myself yet at that time. So I'm going to go with my original answer, which is that there are too many to count, but it is possible to heal all of that trauma so that you can get to your goal, so you can get to your high.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about you, Had?
I mean, for me, it's, yeah, in reflecting, it's like the low points stand out because, yes, there have been quite many. But also I think it can be easier to remember difficulty and pain sometimes than to like remember joy. And some of the work is like, you know, to me, some of the big work is like going to that generative place where I am thinking about joy and what's possible, because there's been so much stuckness, or the feeling of stuckness. But like for me, you know, I grew up, you know, the way my family was like very intense about money. There was a ton of struggle. And like the way that I thought about money was, it was just like a thing that we didn't have. Whoever we were, we didn't have it. And that really translated. And I feel like one of my the lowest point was when I was living in Toronto, and I had fallen in love with this like amazing, you know, incredible woman. It was like, you know, my first huge queer butch femme relationship. It was such a big deal for me. And I just like loved her and was like, yes, we'll do anything. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to immigrate to Canada. And then I found out that it cost $1,000 to file immigration papers. And that was like literally more money than I could imagine having. So it was, for me, it was like such a difficult, stuck place. Because I partially knew it was, you know, not a lot of money, but there was no way for me to imagine having that much money. And I just felt like, well, I didn't know anyone who had $1,000. I didn't know how to get $1,000. It just was like, not only did I not have this thing I wanted so badly, but I was very aware of how unable I was to get this thing or do this thing. Like all my friends were just like broke punks, right? And it was, you know, kind of back to this idea of freedom. It was like a deep unfreedom. There was something that I wanted, which was like love. There's nothing more beautiful than that. But money, it felt like, was the thing that was in the way between me and that. Let's see. Are we a little less frozen now?
Hi, everybody. I'm so sorry. We have a protest happening right outside my door right now. So it just started, like literally as Hadassah was speaking, the internet cut out. So we'll get as much done as we can, but we're in Brooklyn, you know.
Right on.
Happening. Yeah.
Power to the people who are protesting, and, you know, like end to police violence and racialized police violence. And the internet in Brooklyn is whack. It is. But yeah.
I can hardly hear you. Can you please tell your story more? I think I missed the very tail end.
Yeah.
Did you finish?
I did,
okay.
But if we froze, I will undo it. You know, the story simply is like, I needed $1,000 to immigrate. And once we found that out, but it cost that much, again, to me at that time, I could not even conceive of having $1,000, let alone where to get $1,000, or who. I didn't even feel like I knew anyone who had $1,000. So I had this like great love that I wanted to be with, and it really felt like money was the thing between me and being able to figure out how to have this like life with her, you know, in terms of like immigrating to Canada. Which I still think is a really, really good country. So that was a low point, 100% low, because of feeling so stuck and like I didn't know how to solve it. we might have lost Adalina for a moment, but I know she'll hop back on. So in the meantime, what I'll do is I will like just go into like, what was the high point?
So sorry. Had, can you hear
Hi.
me?
I can. Are you back?
I am. I'm sorry. This might keep happening, you guys, but it's important, you know.
Yeah.
And if it happens again and I'm unable to do the healing part of this, I trust that you will be in amazing hands with Hadassah and learning all of the beautiful practical money that she has for us tonight.
Totally. And Adalina,
what I wanted to ask you about that.
Oh, sorry, Adalina, you could always turn off your video, and I can turn off if you
True.
start to slow down, because that could help.
Okay.
Zoom calls.
What I wanted to ask you, I know. What I wanted to ask you is, what was your predominant belief that you had during that time when you couldn't come up with $1,000 and it felt overwhelming?
I mean, my predominant belief at that time was that money is impossible. And I think it really went back to this like, money's for other people, not me story. And it just like, yeah, it just like the feeling of like total impossibility. Like I wrote a poem at that time. It had this line. It was about like living in Canada and going to the food bank. And the line was like, you know, I might never think in thousands, but I'll always remember how she looked at me in my dress. Right. And it was this like real sense of like the beauty of possibility and the tragedy of not being able to like achieve something that shouldn't be restricted by money if we were in a different system, you know. And I think that was when I started to want to be a generative person and think about, well, like what are other ways that like exchange and money and systems can work, right? And it wasn't the first time that I'd like encountered injustice by far, but it certainly was like a time in my life when I was like these systems are set up to privilege people who can easily imagine $1,000 or more, right?
Yeah.
And not me. Yeah.
Right. That's a really good one. I'm sure that will give people some food for thought about their most limiting beliefs that they have going on about money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I know that was definitely one of mine too. And I think for those of us who grow up in a lot of poverty, that tends to be something that continues unless we do work to heal it.
Totally. Totally. So let's see here. Where are we going to go? Like, let's go into some of the let's go into some of the meat of the thing, and keep it moving forward. So we're going to take about the next like 15 or 20 minutes and just do the educational section of this webinar. You know, but just kind of like put a pin in what Adalina and I were just doing. As a money educator, there's so much generativity in having conversations with your friends about money and just straight up asking the story, right? Like, what was your highest high around money? What was your lowest low? And there's so much intimacy that we can build with each other, like starting to talk about these stories and understand where they come from, just to normalize talking about money and finances, right? And not judging ourselves and not judging each other as part of it. So pro tip for a little, you know, for your next Zoom call with all your friends. But here's what I want to talk about. I'm going to take like probably 5 minutes and just start playing around with some prompts and some ideas. So I just finished a financial resilience toolkit. Ooh, I'm going to, for all of you good people on the call, put a link in the Zoom chat to a chapter of it. Here you go. This is just like a little section. It's a whole big thing. But as I've been thinking about this conversation with Adalina and finances and resilience and liberation, which I'm kind of always thinking about because I talk to artist activists about money, and especially now, like in the context of all of the like completely righteous protests that are happening across the US and the world, you know, with the simple ask that there be justice and the very specific ask, right, that police violence against Black and brown people stop immediately. I've been thinking even more about money and resourcing, because I've been thinking about, you know, everyone who has some or lots of resources wanting to and doing more contribution to movements, to bail funds, to organizations, to people, etc. And it really, really is, after like tons of working on my shit and tons of talking to lots of people, it really is my opinion that like the more like thoughtful, forward-thinking, progressive, activist, radical type people who have money to share, are willing to figure out their money stuff, are interested in okay to try to make money and make sense of their money, the more resources get moved to movements and organizations and people who need those resources. And that's one of my like big motivations for doing this work, is like helping us all get ourselves together so that we can move resources, right? And I think if you abstract that back a little bit, we come back to this idea of like money and values being like, well, what is the purpose of money? It's not just a thing we're all supposed to do, although sometimes it seems that way. Money is a proxy for how we can get our needs met, right? Or how we can take care of ourselves or the people or other things that we care about, right? Money is a way of moving belief in one sense of it. It's not the only thing money is, but it is a way that we enable ourselves and others to get what we need. On the one hand, that can be such a painful realization when you don't have the money that you need, right? Like my story of being in Canada. But on the other hand, that can be a really empowering realization when you're like, oh, wait, money is a way that we get what we need. I want myself and other people to have what we need. If I start figuring out this money stuff, I can start actually hitting these needs, which is a positive, right? So here's what I'm gonna have us do just for a moment here. Is like, to me, one of the most unhelpful stories about money that I see is I'm bad at money. And like in talking with people and doing classes, I see that, manifest as like, I'm not good at numbers, or I just don't get this stuff, or I don't, there's a lot of kind of like hand waving bigosity, sort of like, I don't know. But to me, like when I hear people say, I'm bad with money, what I'm often hear them say along with it is like, and I don't think I'm like allowed to get good at it, or maybe I'm assuming it's not for me, or it's not okay if I figure out how this works. And that's the like underlying belief that I think is worth investigating, because to me the question is, well, where does that belief come from? Like, why and in what way? Who told you or what told you that you're not allowed, or that you don't get to, or that you shouldn't understand how one of the sort of like major systematic structures that is around us operates? So the thing that I want to give you to think about, is like, who or what benefits when so many people go around with the belief that not only are we not good at money, but we don't get to be or shouldn't be good at money, that there's something inherently bad about understanding money. Who or what benefits from that belief? And I want to take you back to this idea that like, when we think about money as a tool that enables us to resource ourselves, our communities, things that we care about, it doesn't follow that money is bad if it's a tool that lets us do these things. So therefore, why is it bad to understand, right? And so it's certainly not neutral, right? And that's one of the things that I think makes money really, really useful to understand, because it's happening. And this I went into in the chapter I shared with you, and even more deeply in the workbook. What does it mean to have a systematic analysis of money? And what I mean by that is like, how do we separate out ourselves the things that we think, our underlying beliefs that can totally get in our way around money, from the super genuine, are totally there, like systematic constraints and oppressions that are getting in our way, right? When, you know, and this is where gender, race, sexuality, you know, how you present, the country that you're in, the zip code you were born in starts to show up, right? There are tons of data and lived experience that validates that there are very specific like oppressions and blockers that are in lots of people's ways and impact different people differently, right? This is not just something you can think yourself free from. And I think for so many of us, when we get used to having real blockers in our way, we start to think, well, man, I'm always blocked. Yeah, none of this is going to work. You know what? Like, money's for other people, right? That was my story. You know, and that is the thing worth investigating. What's the difference between something I genuinely can't do because there's like a systematic block in my way, and what's the difference between something that I've just practiced believing that I can't do or shouldn't do or won't be able to do, right? That's where we start to poke at power. That's where we start to poke at the difference between what we believe about ourselves and what we are entitled to or allowed to, and what sort of power systems and structures are putting upon us. And this is honestly why I think like working on money stuff can be super radical and empowering, because yeah, it's great to have what you need. It's excellent to be able to fund communities and things that you care about, but liberating ourselves from like the mindset that sort of capitalism has put upon us, right? And to think, oh, well, I can't or I shouldn't. No, you totally can, and you should, and you can organize with other people to do it too. You know, like I'm all about like ending up with worker co-ops, y'all, you know. But in order to end up with a scenario, right, thinking about the future scenario, the world that we want, the way we want us to be able to be in relationship with each other and resources, means pausing to say, well, if I want to have a world where I can be in a worker co-op with my friends doing work that's interesting to me, I have to want to be willing to figure out how to make a business work, how to think about a business structure, how to talk about money with my coworkers, how we want to talk about salaries. Are we all going to get paid the same? Will we get paid differently? How do we want to actually do this? You have to be able to go into those conversations in order to, you know, move your way into building these better ways that we can interact. To be able to go into those conversations, it's really helpful to back yourself up and say, well, why do I believe what I believe? Why do I think money is what it is? So this worksheet that I sent out to you, you know, has a couple prompts. And of course, the workbook that I just finished has like 100 pages of stories and prompts. But, you know, what I want to give you is this question of like, who benefits from my belief that I don't get to survive? Who benefits from the actions that I take if I'm not trying to change? And who benefits from my financial decisions, right? In uncertain times, a lot of us might be feeling really like we're not able to have a lot of control about the money that's coming in. So what I want to remind all of us is that you do have at least some choice and control about how the money's going out, right? Your financial decisions will often have at least some element that you have total choice around. And as you're starting to like rethink about what it is to be someone who's able to make decisions and choices and be intentional about money, even right now, later today, tomorrow, you can make a super active choice, right, on how you spend some money. It could be whatever, donating to a bail fund. Donate to bail funds, y'all. Or it could be, you know, like I did earlier, going to like the lesbian-owned sober coffee shop here in St. Louis, hell to the yes. Or there's so many ways you can be choiceful. Reminding yourself that you get to choose, especially when you've gotten the message that you don't get to choose, it's a total beginner powerful flex that you can put in place. So I will put the link to the little sort of mini worksheet in the Zoom chat again. And then I'm going to hand it over to Adalina. And my final prompt you know, that I'm going to give you to tee up Adalina is back to this question of like, as you're interrogating and thinking through what it is you like, what your operating system for money is, ask yourself, where does this come from? And how do I know it's true, right? Is this a belief of mine? Is this something that has been systematically put upon me? How do I know that this thing that I'm thinking is true? And with that, I'm giving it to Adalina, and there's some dope ass bail funds going into the Zoom chat, which is great.
Hey everybody, things have quieted down on my street a little bit, so I think we'll be able to get through the healing part. But if not, Fox posted some bail funds to donate to there. Thank you so much, Fox. And I also saw your comment about other people's cats, and they are really cute. I'm so sorry, I'm going to butcher your name, Sei. I'm sure I'm saying it incorrectly. I'm very sorry. But your cat is super cute. And thank you so much for that prompt, Had, because that will lead us into our next thing that we're going to do. So I'm sure everyone's sitting thinking, what was that thought? What was that belief? Where did I get that from? As you think about that, I just want to talk a little bit about the brain. I'm just going to spend 5 minutes on some neuroscience stuff. If you're really geeky and love science like I do, then you'll be really into it. If not, please hang out anyway and absorb the information, just because when we do healing work, it really helps us if we know why it's going to work, you know, instead of just kind of like blindly trusting. For those of you that know Hadassah and I well, you know that we grew up in a very churchy environment where there was a lot of that. So trigger for me, I like to know why. Why is this going to work? What it is about this that's going to help me. I want you to show me and tell me. So let's start with a money trauma. So we all have money traumas, whether we have thought about them or not, whether it's occurred to us that we have them or not. I've literally never met a person in the entire world who's had zero money traumas. I've worked in 8 or 9 different countries at this point, and it just happens, you know, things happen to us with money. It represents security. As Had was saying earlier, it represents freedom. There's so much that it represents in our lives. And so when we're thinking about how we think about money and where did we get that belief from or that thought from, we also want to think about, is this rooted somewhere in my existence? So I'm going to give you an example just to lead us off. So one of my earliest money beliefs, and I think Had talks about this in her book too, as you know, we grew up together, so we have a lot of the same old ones that we've healed. One of my first ones was that people who had money were evil. And I got this from my parents. They both had grown up without resources, and my father is a Native American. And so he had grown up actually being told that he couldn't go to school. And so there was the whole thing about education. And my mother had grown up in a family where only the boys got to go to school and the girls had to just get married or figure it out. So that was their trauma and what they brought into the family. And then when I would watch them deal with money in our household, there was always a lot of like, oh, well, you know, we can't make the electricity bill this month. Well, why don't you ask Jack? Oh, Jack is disgusting. He's got so much money. Anytime we had to borrow money from someone else, there was a lot of like denigrating language about that person. And so as a child, you learn from those things. So I learned that money was really evil. Anybody who had money was really evil. If I ever had money, people were going to talk about me behind my back and then ask to borrow money from me to my face. And so I spent a lot of time in that narrative. And so what's actually happening as you become an adult, your prefrontal cortex finally gets solidified. So until you're about 21, anywhere from 21 to 24, your prefrontal cortex, this part of your brain right here, is not fully developed. So it's still making new beliefs, making new memories. It's constantly taking in information and processing it and deciding your personality, which is a really big deal if you think about it. So prior to this age, of course, you're taking in a lot of your parents' beliefs and a lot of society's beliefs around you. It still happens to us as adults, of course, but on a much lesser scale. So when we want to talk about money trauma and how to recover, we first want to go to a belief or has shaped a lot of our current life. So I'm going to give another example of this. So, that prefrontal cortex was developing as a kid. I'm hearing about how people with money are evil. And the way that I started behaving towards that was to only apply for like the lowest paying jobs that I could. You turn 16, if your parents don't have money in the United States anyway, you get a job so that you can afford to maybe buy a car at some point, which is a really big deal when you're 16 in this country. Or you need to save for college. I knew that I had no college fund whatsoever. So college was really important to me. I knew that I really wanted to go. So at 16, I dropped out of ballet classes. I stopped doing theater. I stopped doing all of the joyful activities that were in my life. And I got 3 jobs. And I worked those 3 jobs for the rest of my time in high school to try to save money to go to college. And even just being able to do that, I recognize as a huge privilege. So the belief that people who had money were evil affected my actions in the sense that instead of, even though I knew that I was a very smart person and my teachers were always really complimentary about my brain, I instead applied to be like a line cook. I applied to do just anything that people would let me do for money so that I could reach that goal of finally going to college. In hindsight, I can see that I could have applied for higher paying jobs. This was, how old we are, right? We're 40. So this was a long time ago, and typing was like a new thing. I knew how to type. I could have gotten a job as a typist of some sort. We actually had those back then. And that would have paid a lot better, but instead I worked 3 jobs. So what I want you to do now, before we get started on the healing part, is to think about what it was that happened at a certain point in time that caused you to act differently, that caused you to make different decisions that were maybe not in your own best interest. And of course, no judgments of yourself during all of this. That's where you were acting from. That's where you were coming from. It all happened. You don't have to feel badly about it now. It's just something that happened. And so as you think about that, the process that we're going to do today, you're going to think about a memory. It can be something even from the past couple of weeks, something related to what we were just talking about, this knowledge of, okay, I was kind of programmed this way as a child, and then as an adult, I chose to act in this way because of that programming. Along those lines, think about a certain memory that you have that you want to work on tonight. If we're in private session, I usually ask people to go way, way back to childhood, to like their very first experience of money, but we're not going to do that tonight. If you work with our Mindful Money bundle that Hadassah and I have put together for you afterwards, you'll do that in that audio. But tonight we're going to keep it easy, keep it simple. It's getting late for some of us. So think about a memory that you have that brought you back to kind of that childhood programmed place. So an example of this would be, let's say you're in a place where you can actually go out for coffee now. You go out for coffee, you want the $8 coffee that's super fancy, but you're like, oh my God, that's just too extravagant. I can't do it. So you settle on the $3 or $4 coffee, and then you realize, oh, that's because I watched my mom always want something nicer than what she had, and she always went for what was cheapest because we didn't have any money. So that's a possible example. We all have our own. If there's anybody here who grew up with lots of money and you feel guilt and shame about that when people like me talk about our childhoods, that can also be something to work on. You can think about how you were programmed at a young age to feel guilt and to feel shame about that. And we'll walk through a memory process together. So what we're going to do, once you have this memory and this thing that you want to work on, we are going to first work with our hippocampus, our hypothalamus, our cingulate gyrus, and our amygdala. And those 4 parts of the brain are what's called our limbic system, or your limbic brain. And so in our limbic brain, things can get pretty cave person in there. So our limbic brain is responsible for keeping us alive. And it works really well when we are being threatened. So it's the part of your brain that puts your body into fight or flight. So if you're trying to run away from a predator, for example, your limbic brain is helping you do that. It's setting off all of the right responses in your body to give you extra strength, extra power to run. It stops digestion. It increases your heart rate so that you can really run from that predator. However, actually, I can't even say that right now because of protests. I would say we don't run from predators so much, but actually right now we do. At this point in life, though, there are other things that also set off this response. So if you are, let's say, being chased by a cop for protesting and standing up for what you know is right, that can set it off. Also, if you happen to be, receiving a new bill in the mail and you feel like you don't have the money to pay for it, that can set it off. Hearing something negative from somebody that you love can also set that off. And because we live in such a fast-paced society today, the latest neuroscience research actually shows that the modern person, as of the year 2006, goes into fight or flight about 30 times more per day than a person from 1952. So our world has changed unimaginably. And what doing this kind of healing work will do for you is that it will allow your limbic brain to go into a relaxed place. It will allow your digestion to start to work again. It will slow down your heart rate. And then it will also allow you to retrain your brain so that you can release those old memories. What our limbic brain does is it hangs on to memories. It associates our memories with certain emotions. It's the place in our body that also is responsible for chronic pain, interestingly enough. So if this part of your brain is constantly going back to this money memory from childhood or something, just every time you try to get a coffee, you can imagine what kind of impact that's having on your body and on your mind and your soul. So what we really want to do here today is to work with our limbic brain so that we can rewrite that memory. And again, I'm going to ask you to work with a memory that's a little more recent, so we don't go into like a full trauma mode today, because we are here in a group and we have limited time. But again, if you work with our Mindful Money Guide bundle, you will go back as far as you possibly can to heal the oldest ones. And so I would like everybody to think of what their memory is. You probably know what it is by now. Again, it could be you getting coffee. It could be you getting to the grocery store and realizing that you can't buy everything that you need. It could be getting your rent bill and realizing it's kind of tight this month. I know that with the pandemic, a lot of people's job situations have changed, especially if you're a worker, aren't as many clients do. And so think about that memory and allow brain here. We're going to see everything that we would see. We're going to hear everything and feel everything that we would feel. And if you can, smell everything that you could smell. So the example I'm going to use is the coffee one. So I get to the coffee shop, I want the $8 coffee, but my limbic brain is reminding me of that childhood memory of my mom always, getting less than what she wanted because there wasn't quite enough. Would I have the daring, the audacity to get the $8 coffee? No, I do not. So I want everyone to go into that memory. I can see the walls of the coffee shop around me. I can hear the sounds of the espresso machine and people chatting. I can smell the smell of the coffee and I can feel that feeling. And so I'd like everybody to close their eyes. A channeled healing. It's like we'll work with the structures of your brain so that you can rewrite this memory into something that's really healing and empowering for you. So just close your eyes. I'm going to close mine too. And start to take some deep breaths. We're going to calm down this limbic brain now and calm down this memory by working with it, taking it through all the different parts of our limbic brain again to rewrite it into something that's helpful. And pretend that you're in your very favorite place in nature. So this can be a beach, or a forest. Or if you're not a nature person, this can be your living room, your bed, whatever feels really good to you today. And just start to feel, if you're outside, if you can, start to feel the healing energy from the earth moving up your feet. And you can feel this too, even if you're in your house. If you love being in your house, you can feel the healing energy from there, moving up your feet and up your legs and all the way up through your body, through every chakra in your body. If you don't know where they are, it's okay. And as you keep moving the energy up, allow the energy to flow out of your head and fill in the space around you, 4 feet in every direction. And then softly and gently bring your mind, body, and spirit up through the sky and through the clouds, up through the stars and the planets, and up through the different colors of the universe, the reds and oranges, yellows, greens, blues, pinks, and purples. And further up through the different laws of the universe, and all the way up to this place of iridescent light. And allow this iridescent light to flow all around you. Imagine yourself laying down super comfortably on a beam of light. And take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And now we're going to activate that limbic brain by bringing forward that memory of yours, the memory that you would most like to change and to rewrite. And see all of the sights around you there. Smell the smells. Hear all of the sounds. And instead of that memory taking place the way that it did, rewrite it into something that's super powerful for you. Rewrite it into the way that it should have gone, into what really felt right. Even if your rewrite feels too fantastical and like it's something that would never ever happen, use that. That's the rewrite you want to use. I'm just going to go silent here for a minute while everybody does that. For example, with the coffee example, I would rewrite that memory to walk into the coffee shop and order the $8 coffee and say, I can really afford this. It's okay. My mom couldn't, but I can. My story is different. It's not her story. And just rewrite that memory in whatever feels most powerful for you. And take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And wrap up that memory, your new memory, your empowering memory. And now my spirit guides are going to channel through some sound harmonics. And the reason that we use sound harmonics in this type of healing is that when we rewrite a memory, we are working with the limbic brain, and it's allowing us to rewrite history, to literally rewrite our history. And it's forming a new memory. But we want to make sure that that new memory is really solidified in our brain so that we can start to act differently with this new memory. So for example, with the coffee memory, once I solidify this new memory in my brain over time, I will start to just walk into the coffee shop and order the $8 coffee because I know that I can. And so as you receive these sounds, we're going to be working with the 10th cranial nerve. That's the vagus nerve. For all of those of you who are into science, this is a major part of healing from trauma, is to stimulate your vagus nerve. So we're going to do that together now. The guides are also going to let you know about some certain hand motions to create. It's just touching your fingertips together, and this helps to stimulate certain parts of your brain as well. So we'll work through all the different structures of your brain today. So just join your first finger and your thumb together on both hands. And I'm going to make some tones, create some tones with my mouth. And as I create them, I want you to also create them with your mouth. If you don't have the same notes as me, it doesn't matter. If you're super out of tune, it doesn't matter. There are no judgments here. We're just stimulating this vagus nerve so that we can recover from this old money, trauma, and belief, and welcome in the new memory that you just created. And connect your middle finger with your thumb on both hands. And take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And now imagine the most incredible money story you could possibly have. So what I like to ask people to do is to make it very detailed. For example, maybe your most incredible money story is making sure that rent is paid on time and not having to work any more than you do right now. So visualize yourself filling out that rent check, sending it out, having no doubts, no fears, knowing that it's going to be okay, and still not having to work more than you do now. Or maybe your fantastical money story is getting a free trip somewhere that you've always wanted to go. And you can imagine this coming in any way that you want, like a sweepstakes or money from a friend to just go do what you've most wanted to do in a different place. Whatever your fantastical money story is, bring that up and really build it out. Imagine what things will look like, what things will feel like. The more feeling you can involve in this, the better. And as you're imagining all of this, bring your ring finger and your pinky finger together with your thumb on both hands and tone with us. And take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And relax your hands. Now we've worked through each part of the limbic brain. We also worked through the cerebellum today. And as you continue to live in this new space with this new memory, just observe your actions over the next few days and see if you find yourself reacting to things differently, taking different steps than you would normally have taken. And just softly and gently begin to bring yourself out of this place of iridescent light and down through the laws of the universe, down through the different colors, purples and pinks, blues, greens, yellows, oranges and reds, and down through the planets and the stars, and down through the sky. And just gently touch your feet down, back into your favorite place in nature, or maybe it's your favorite place inside if you're not into nature right now. And bring that healing energy up your feet, up your legs, and up through your whole body, through your chakra system. And allow it to flow out of the crown of your head, filling in the space around you, 4 feet in every direction. And take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. A deep breath in and a deep breath out. And a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And slowly open your eyes. Hi everybody, welcome back. I know people get a little, I know I do anyway, a little out of it after these healing sessions. So if you want to just take a second and do a stretch, bring the blood back into your arms and your legs, move around a little bit. You can do some neck rolls, whatever feels good to you. Kind of move your body around, wake it back up.
I love how you bring such like spaciousness and science together. And I just love what you do and how you do it. Adalina, thank you.
Thank you.
So good people, we're going to wrap up in a minute or two. So I'm going to put a link in the Zoom chat, and then also we'll send you an email afterwards. But so I created a guide that is about 100 pages of exercises, journaling prompts, story reframes, ways to think about yourself and systems, to start thinking about the why, and then some skills for the how. And Adalina has put together a transformational healing to like get underneath it all and like redo the wiring. Adalina, talk a little bit about what you put together.
Sure. If you signed up for the webinar through me, you just received an email with the link to purchase this. But what I put together is an audio healing kind of. So when we're working with our limbic brain, we really want to go as deeply as possible. We want to go back to the very first memory that we possibly can, and then rewire our brains from there. And so what this audio will allow you to do, it's about 20 minutes long. It will trace you back. It will explain more of the neuroscience first, and then it will trace you back to your earliest childhood memory of money. And from there, you'll start to rewrite it. And then the audio will prompt you through the different hand motions to create, to stimulate certain parts of your brain, and to do the polyvagal toning, which is what we just did, so that you can recover your brain and your body and your soul from that trauma. And the intensity level of the audio healing and the mindful money guide bundle is way up there. So if you feel like I cannot cope, I have way too much money trauma, it's not going to get any better for me, I'm going to take all these practical steps and do the journaling stuff that is in Hadassah's book, but I don't feel like there's anything that's going to help my money trauma. I have to tell you that this definitely will. It's something that I've been practicing with clients for years, and they find such incredible relief in their lives. And it also starts as we clear out all of the trauma. I don't like to advertise it this way because I don't want people to do it just for the results. I want everyone to do it for the healing, but I understand that the results are pretty great too. Once you clear out a lot of that trauma, you're making space for new. And so you're making space for more financial resources, more financial abundance. And as you keep clearing out that trauma, you can use this audio over and over again. There's no like time limit. It's yours to keep. You download it and you can use it every day. And I actually recommend that you do for a couple of weeks just to get your brain retrained. You'll start to notice that you behave really differently around money. You start to take it all into action just because you're retraining your brain. So your brain knows what to do now. It's not living in fear and panic and scarcity and lack or shame or guilt or whatever your personal money story is.
Totally. And that's why we put these two things together, because the workbook that I put together has journaling prompts and a lot of like sort of like thinking logical brain things to help you start to like surface and source your stories and your understandings. And then skills, like things you could actually try, you know, once you start to like release and like want to shift some of the things that you're doing. So it's like how to change, like it's a triple hitter. I think we put these things together. The bundle is $49. Like, yeah, I think very affordable when you want to consider the cost of, I don't know, struggling through how you feel about money all the time. But yeah, it's up at $49 for a week. And if you signed up for this webinar through me, I'll get that email link out to you in a hot second in your email, but it's also here in the Zoom call. Adalina, I just like really love that after like 30 something years of knowing you and us being like the people we were in our 10s and 20s and 30s, we can now like be people who, you know, approach healing and transformation in our ways that I think come together so beautifully. So I'm just grateful to know you, and I want to thank you, and I want to thank everyone who hopped on this call today to take some time to do the work, because that's how the work gets done. Any final thoughts, Adalina?
I think that sums it up perfectly. And I know that Had and I have both said this a few times, but wherever you are with your money story and wherever you feel like hopeless about it, we've both been there and we came out on the other side. And we're here for you. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to either one of us. And thanks so much for being here.
Indeed, there is 100% an other side, you know, to the way that you feel about money and to the things that you can do. So don't just let us be living proof. Go ahead, you know. All right, y'all, I'm going to close this call. So nice to meet you all virtually. Right, with much love. Thank you and good night.
Bye, everybody. Good night.
Good night.